The Melbourne Vixens are just one win away from claiming the minor premiership for 2012. The Magic take their winning streak to 8 games in a row and all but guarantee another finals berth, while the Firebirds and the Swifts keep their finals chances alive just with one round to go in the competition. As I say hello and welcome to Centre Pass, the official video podcast of the ANZ Championship. Dan Ryan here alongside Sharelle McMahon. Sharelle, 13 rounds down, 1 to go, 6 teams, mathematical chances of making the top 4.
It's incredible really that we still have 6 teams in the mix for that final 4 position, and last week every game seemed to change the top position, so that is how tight this is and how much I guess the next round's matches will really play into the final positions. Every
match had a consequence in round 13. Let's check out all the results of this weekend's action. Of course, it was the Magic convincing winners over the Adelaide Thunderbirds 59-42 in Tauranga. The Swifts getting up over the Southern Steel 55-42 in Sydney. The Firebirds, very strong performance against the West Coast Fever, 20-goal winners in Brisbane. The Mystics, too good for the Tactics, 64-55. And then the Vixens, 8-goal winners over the Central Pulse in Porirua. Sharelle, let's first talk about the big game, the Magic against the Thunderbirds. It was a huge game for so many factors. I was actually fortunate enough to be there. The crowd was absolutely amazing. I likened it to being stuck in a hailstorm in a tin shed with golf balls raining on the roof. The sound in that stadium was just unbelievable.
And this is one of the really beautiful things about a New Zealand crowd often, that they create such an intense atmosphere for the opposition teams coming in, and certainly the Magic have got a great home crowd behind them, and you know they really pulled that team through for a great finish.
8th successive win for the Magic. The Thunderbirds started the first quarter in quite good fashion, but then from then on in at quarter time, it was the Magic in control, and they really did put it together. An 18-7 third quarter performance really was the difference in the end.
Well, that was the difference, and we see that quite a bit with the Magic, that other teams seem to stay with them for the first half or so, and then they really put on the afterburners and seem to crush other teams, and they are so impressive. And I've got no doubt that other teams that are vying for those final 4 positions are a bit shaky because they're looking the goods.
Speaking of impressive, that defensive combination, we talk a lot about it. Liana de Bruin, Casey Williams, seeing it in full flight, it has to be the best defensive pairing in this competition. Casey Williams has been good the past couple of weeks, but she was awesome on Saturday. In form with Liana de Bruin, they are just lethal.
They are, and you know, really shutting down Cal Borrego and Erin Bell, which have been a fairly potent attack lineup too. So that is absolutely the informed defensive lineup, getting better and better every week.
Irene van Dijk was outstanding. We know she turned 40 during the week. We know the Adelaide Thunderbirds defence line has been quite outstanding throughout the year, but did not have a good day against the Magic front line.
No, really had no answers against a Magic front line who really was on song. I mean, Laura Langman had a really fantastic, solid game, and as you mentioned, Irene van Dijk still getting the job done at 40 years of age, and perhaps that height difference that the Thunderbirds lineup has, they're a slightly shorter defensive lineup, perhaps that's something that really kind of stood out in this game.
We were talking a lot in the pre-match and in last week's show, should I say, about the matchup between Nat Bomberto and Laura Langman. It didn't live up to the expectations due to the injury to Nat Bomberto. She of course broke her finger in the third quarter, so that didn't fall into place as we would have liked. But a big loss for the Thunderbirds, but Nat Bomberto has said that she will be right next week, but will be playing with a broken finger.
Yeah, well, we've heard that back now, that she's got the broken finger, but she'll soldier on as she often does, and obviously an important, incredibly important member of that team to have her on the court.
Well, the result for the Thunderbirds means they lose the opportunity to win the minor premiership and have a home semi-final. They drop from 1st to 4th, which is just amazing. The Magic, arguably now the informed team in the competition, Sharelle. You remember back to round 4, they were 10th. They're now well and truly inside the top 4, and arguably the team to beat at the moment.
That's right, 10th, which is last on the ladder. There's only 10 teams, let's not forget. So they were last on the ladder after the first 4 rounds, and now really charging for this finals.
Let's now have a look at the Queensland Firebirds and West Coast Fever. The defending champions, the Queensland Firebirds, still alive. They had an interesting week on the training track, lost Kira Tromp with an ACL injury, but the team responded really well, posting a 20-goal victory against the Fever.
They did. Really impressive performance by the Firebirds, keeping their slim finals chances alive. But for me, on the flip side, the Fever was slightly disappointing after a really impressive performance against the Vixens just the week before.
So the win now for the Firebirds puts them an outside chance to make the finals. They do need results to fall their way, but that was probably one of their most consistent and 60-minute performances of the year.
Yeah, it really was. And I think Natalie Medhurst had one of the performances that she's had for the season, and Chanel Gomez, after having a really great match again against the Vixens, as I mentioned last week, got a little bit of a lesson, I think, from a really fantastic goal attack in Natalie Medhurst, and of course that's going to be a learning curve for Gomez as she goes through. A
big game on Monday night was the Vixens against the Central Pulse. It had a huge outcome on who would be in that top 4. The Vixens go back to the top of the table with an 8-goal victory over the Pulse. The Melbourne Vixens this year have been notorious slow starters in the first 30 minutes of a match, particularly in the first 15, but they come out of the blocks charging 18-8 at quarter time.
They did. They obviously found they've been talking about trying to find the right recipe to start the game really well, and I think they may have hit on it, particularly for this week. They, are up by 10 goals, ended up winning the game by 8, so the margin didn't get pushed out, which I'm sure they would have liked to have done across the 4 quarters, but still a pretty solid performance by the Vixens.
Bit of a blow for the Central Pulse. Katarina Cooper injuring her knee. We suspect that's an ACL too, so that's the 4th knee injury this year in the ANZ Champ. So a big blow there for the Central Pulse. If we look on a positive note for the Melbourne Vixens, they may have found their answer in that goal shooter position with Karen Howard, simply outstanding 37 goals.
Yeah, really outstanding. She took the court for the entire match and was a really solid, great target up there for the Vixens. Really, their attack end possibly were a little bit more well-oiled than we've seen it in times gone by. And the other interesting one to mention is Jiva Mentor, because she shut Caitlin Thwaites down, who really has been a great target for the Pulse this season.
She certainly has, Sherelle. I suppose the interesting point for the Melbourne Vixens now is they're just one win away from claiming the minor premiership. They haven't played finals since 2009 when they won the premiership, so they're on track there. And a bit of talk, there may be a semi-final, hopefully, at Rod Laver Arena, which would be just fantastic for the sport.
It would be huge. Obviously, the Melbourne crowds have been a little bit of a talking point this season. They've had some fantastic, best ever crowds, really. And Rod Laver Arena, that'd be great to see.
Yeah, we cross our fingers for that one. It was a huge round of the ANZ Champs. Here is the ladder after 13 rounds of the competition. The Vixens back on top of the table, equal points with the Mystics. They're both on 18. Then the Magic and the Thunderbirds and Swifts all on 16 points. Firebirds and Swifts outside the top 4. Chances just to make the finals.
Just. Although, I'm going to call it now. I think the top 4 is settled on who's actually going to be in there. I think we've still got some perhaps jostling for position up there, but I know they're a mathematical chance, but I can't see the Swifts and the Firebirds getting up there. I think it's settled.
Certainly out of their hands, that's for sure. Well, let's have a look, Sherelle, at who was your performer of the week for round 13.
Well, mine, I mentioned Nat Medhurst before having a great game. In fact, she scored the most goals that she's ever scored in the ANZ Championship. Outscored Romelda Aiken, outscored Caitlin Bassett up the other end. So she 38 out of 45, really great performance, and was the general and this win kept the Firebirds' chances alive for the final, so really important one.
Another goaler is getting my performer of the week, and it is the birthday girl, Irene Van Dyke. Unbelievable that she is 40 years of age, in terrific shape, terrific form, absolutely dominant on the weekend, 41 goals from 42 attempts. So happy birthday to Irene, and still as good as ever.
Absolutely.
Time now to preview the final round of the season for this year, and this is how the teams will line up. It will be the Steel taking on the Vixens in Invercargill, the Thunderbirds hosting the Canterbury Tactics in Adelaide, the Fever and the Pulse going head-to-head in Perth, the Mystics and the Swifts in Auckland. That'll be a big one. And then a massive game to round out the home and away season for 2012, the Magic up against the Queensland Firebirds. Sherelle, first let's quickly touch on the Adelaide Thunderbirds against the Canterbury Tactics. A must-win game for the Thunderbirds to secure a top 4 spot, and the Tactics absolutely desperate not to win the wooden spoon, which they've owned for the past 2 seasons.
That's right. I'm sure they want to get their hands off that wooden spoon. And for the Thunderbirds, a really important one, obviously, as you said, for getting that top 4 position. But not only that, perhaps regaining a bit of confidence from a fairly big loss against the Magic last week.
Huge game over in Auckland will be the Northern Mystics up against the New South Wales Swifts. The situation for the Swifts is they must win and hope that the Firebirds and Thunderbirds both lose to make the top 4.
Yeah, that's right. So the Swifts in a very precarious situation, relying on other matches to go their way. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Mystics handle this really short-moving attack line of the Swifts.
The Mystics too, if they win, can all but guarantee a top 2 spot and a second chance come the finals, which will be crucial for them. They, of course, finished 4th last year. The huge game, Sherelle, probably the biggest game of this round and arguably maybe the last couple of rounds of the competition. The Magic up against the Firebirds. The situation for the defending champions, for the Firebirds, they must win and hope that the Thunderbirds and Swifts both lose.
Yes, and this is what I mentioned before, unlikely that that's all going to fall into place, but still possible, absolutely possible. And that's what the Firebirds are still gunning for. And obviously they're starting to put some good performances together, but great matchups all over the court here. I just can't wait for it.
Yeah, huge test for the Firebirds. The Magic looking for their 9th win in a row. So that will be an absolutely cracking match. Sherelle, in good news for you, not so good for me. We're now tied at 40-all in our tipping competition. You had a perfect round, I might add,
Thank
5
you.
from 5.
I think probably the first one of the year,
Yeah,
really. But
absolutely. I was an abysmal 2 from 5. But who are you tipping for this round of the ANZ Champs, the final round of the competition?
Okay, for this round, my tips are the Vixens, the Thunderbirds, the Pulse, the Mystics, and the Magic.
All right, controversial, Sherelle. We're going one different. I'm
Okay.
going with the Vixens, the Thunderbirds, the Fever to beat the Pulse at home. I hope that happens for my sake and their sake. The Mystics and the Magic. Well, that is about it for another episode of Centre Pass. Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure you follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Check out the ANZ Champs Facebook page and their website, and also download the ANZ Champs iPhone app. Sherelle, make sure you check onto the ANZ Champs website because the All-Star team is back out again for 2012.
I love seeing who comes out in that All-Star team, so I'll look forward to it.
Make sure you check your local guides for all of the broadcast details for round 14. One round to go of the competition. Sherelle, thank you very much.
No problems.
We'll catch you next week on Centre Pass. Until then, goodbye for now. Thank you to our sponsors, our principal sponsor,
Associate sponsors,
support sponsors and suppliers,
and our broadcast partners.